All right. Hi, guys. So, over the weekend, I had an opportunity to see Dune Part 2, but also Part 1. I kind of did like this whole marathon thing to make sure that I was up to date with the first movie before I went out to see the second movie because I had heard all the rage about Dune in a whole ever since back to like the 80s when they released the original one. And I think somewhere in like the early 2000s they did a TV show. Everybody was kind of on this big Dune kick, but I never really got into it. So I finally got around. I watched part one. Then I went to the movie theater so I actually go out and see part two. And man, was I blown away. I have like, how was I not aware that this franchise was such a great franchise? It had such a great story. Also, such a familiar story. So much like I had already seen it before. Now, if you're not aware, and I wasn't aware at the time, and probably because I had skipped Dune for quite some time, that Dune is a lot like Star Wars. And I probably should restate that. Star Wars is a lot like Dune. And I know George Lucas, we all pray at the altar that is George Lucas and Lucasfilms.
The days are short in this part of the world.
But we gotta stop giving Zack Snyder a bunch of crap about him stealing ideas for Rebel Moon from George Lucas when George Lucas stole the idea from Star Wars from Dune. So I guess they were both cheating. Everybody was cheating off of Frank Herbert. And like I said, I don't want to say that George Lucas didn't come up with such an amazing idea on his own for the Star Wars universe and how expansive it is, and it's gone on for like 30, 50 years at this point. And he built such a great thing, but you know, he had a lot of help from Frank Herbert. And I wanted to take some time for the people like me who are Star Wars fans who didn't realize that there was a lot of similarities is what I'm going to say, and I'm not going to say outright copy. But there are a lot of similarities between Star Wars and Dune. So much so that when we look at Dune, Dune has a great expansive universe. It not just takes place, it doesn't just take place on the planet of Dune or Arrakis, as they refer to it in the movie, but was first known as Dune. But it actually extends into the universe, and in the later books they kind of get more into like the galaxy war, aka Star Wars. But our first movie takes place on a little desert planet. Some would say it's Arrakis, some would call it Dune, but I refer to it as Tatooine. And on this desert planet, the planet actually has people on it, its own native people there that are people who live in the desert. Some would call them sand people. They're referred to as the Freemen in the movie, or the Fremen. And we have our protagonist, Paul Atreides. Paul Atreides is a prince who comes down, and his mom kind of tells him, his mom, who actually has a power within her, and she's part of a cultish group called the Bene Gesserit, who can sometimes control people with their mind, the Force. All right, and her son, is not supposed to be a male. They normally have females for the offspring, and this is one of the first males that have been born from the Jedi, and he is actually looked at by the people of Arrakis, aka Tatooine, as the chosen one. You know, kind of like Anakin was, or maybe even Luke. You know, the son of a great person who is now supposed to kind of balance out the galaxy. I don't know where George Lucas got that from. Anyway, so as we go on, we meet one of the other protagonists of the film, one of the Fremen, sand people, by the name of Chani. And Chani gives me a lot of either Padme, in a sense, or you could say that she gives you a lot of Leia, because even for her even to her people, she means something. Maybe not at not at the height of Leia, but maybe not at the height of Padme. But she is becoming his love interest in it, and along the way, when you get further into the books, she happens to have Paul's children who inherit his abilities, and they happen to be twins, a male and a female. Where have we seen that before? All right, so back on this desert planet, I even noticed one time in one of the background shots there was they didn't have two suns, but it looks like they had two moons. Yeah. So I mean, George changed it up a little bit on that one, just a little bit. Other things that I wrote down here is that the bad people in here, so they're actually led by an emperor who wants to kind of have who has control of the galaxy. And he has a force of soldiers called the Sardaukar, whose outfits kind of look like stormtroopers. I mean, I feel like maybe I'm reaching on that one, but I mean, if you squint your eyes, they're stormtroopers. Last thing that I noticed on here, and I was like, why didn't they go full board? I mean, why didn't George just actually just copy this exactly? But I like his idea better, so I guess you could say, hey, George did it better. He took a great idea and made it into a better idea. The Fremen have their Chris knives. Their Chris knives are very sacred to them, and they use them in battle where they should really be using blasters. But, you know, they are very, very proficient with them, and they're very deadly, and I seem to cut through anything, kind of like a lightsaber. But I'm going to give George that one because I still feel like lightsabers are a cooler thing than the Chris knives made from the sandworms on the planet. But speaking of the sandworms, I mean, we even kind of copied that twice. Because if you think about it, later throughout the mythology of Star Wars, we talk about the great crate dragon, which is very similar to the great sandworm in this movie, as well as we think about the Sarlacc, who's basically a sandworm in the sand who just decided not to come out the sand. So I mean, yeah, the exact same. I mean that's where I'm going to stop on all the things that I noticed about Dune and its relation to Star Wars. But I'm sure there's a lot more things, a lot more minor things that maybe I didn't quite pick up on it because this is really my first time watching Dune. And but it did get me really interested in the franchise in general. I'm not going to start a video series on here called our Dune topics or anything like that. Look, it's hard enough to do Rule of Two when the Star Wars news kind of comes out a little bit at a time. But maybe when I need some Star Wars news, I'll do some Dune news because it seems like that this franchise is going to continue on. The first two movies only seem to have covered the first book. And it looks like the way that they end Dune 2 that we're actually going to be getting a sequel going forward anyway. There's about, I think they said it was like 6 to 8 books in this book series. So there's a lot to pull from. And when I kind of looked into it, man, does it get crazy. So a lot of the tropes that we have from Star Wars, I will be touching on those, on how they match up with the books going forward and the movies going forward. But from what I've seen so far, man.
Wait, guys, are you still here? I'm glad you're still here. All right, so if you look down, I mean, it's somewhere over here. Look down. We actually have a Patreon. So if you guys watch the show and you really like what we want to do and you want to help support the show and you want to help me get an editor so I can get to sleep at night because I'm really tired and you guys see all my mistakes in the episodes. So please go to patreon.com/thegoods. Give us a penny, give us a nickel, give us $1.
Just don't give us the finger.
Don't do that. But make sure you do donate something because we do have some giveaways. There's posters, there's t-shirts.
I'll sign something for you.
Exactly. So take a look, guys, and help us out. We appreciate it.